This is not how I imagined my first day.
Resident Evil 2 Remake launched 5 years ago on January 25th, 2019, returning to the year 1998 in the zombie-infested streets of Raccoon City. Remade from the ground up, Resident Evil 2 Remake recreates the beloved original 1998 classic, transforming it into an amazing blood-soaked infected nightmare. This entry was the game to further develop my love for the series to the point where I'll lose my mind over a new Resident Evil game, whether it's a sequel or a remake. Resident Evil 7 Biohazard was basically me dipping my toes in the water, while Resident Evil 2 Remake, or Resident Evil 2 2019, was my full dive into the horrifying survival horror sea of the Resident Evil universe. Resident Evil 2 2019 is a borderline masterpiece, as well as one of the best remakes I've played, and one of the best remakes in existence. That is, in my opinion. I really love what Capcom did here post Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. As a heads up though, before getting into the game itself, I will not be covering everything about the story entirely. I'll simply go over the story, but not in full detail. Basically a slight overview of what I liked about the story and characters. Okay then, if you're actually still here with me, then welcome. Let us enter once more into the world of survival horror as Claire Redfield and Leon S. Kennedy survive their way throughout the nightmare of Raccoon City.
Help me! Please!
What in God's name?
Resident Evil 2 Remake, or Resident Evil 2 2019, is quite the horrifying adventure. The reimagining of this game is really amazing. Never before have I even heard of the remake for this, nor did I watch any trailers until I seen it was in stores a week or two after release. I'm actually not joking you about that. That's actually something that happened with my anticipation for Devil May Cry 5. I mean, it probably was because I was heavily anticipating Devil May Cry 5 launching that year, and I probably never paid it any attention. But man, was Capcom actually going crazy with both games launching back to back, being both equally amazing in their own way. Before picking up my copy later, I actually happened to have a copy of the original Resident Evil 2 for the Nintendo 64 that came from my father. So the night before I played the remake, I actually played a bit of the original to get an idea of what was in store with the remake. While charming and cool the original was, it did not prepare me for the horrors that were waiting in the city of the undead. Resident Evil 2 was the game to show me what the series is really all about, that being the remake. Besides Dying Light as well as the remake of Resident Evil from 2002, Resident Evil 2 was one of the only other games to make zombies an absolute nightmare to face off against. I consider this a big achievement because, in my opinion, zombies are not as menacing or threatening to me unless approached from a specific angle. That's probably due to the oversaturation of zombies being in different types of media like films, TV series, and obviously, of course, video games. And I mean, you know, you can't blame everyone that has a problem with zombies not being as spooky or horrifying, because there were a lot of zombie titles in different types of media. So yeah, but at least Resident Evil 2 2019 gets that right, and it's absolutely horrifying. It is downright horrifying. Now, let us get to the actual undead world of RC, speaking of zombies. The setting of Raccoon City is very stunning. It's not exactly new because we've seen it before 1,000 times, but here it's beautifully recreated in the Reach for the Moon engine that Capcom's been working with since around 2014. Before Capcom's newer engine's existence, the original RC, or Raccoon City, was featured both in CG cinematics and pre-rendered backgrounds in the original Resident Evil 2 from 1998. I do not have footage, unfortunately, from the original for demonstration, but believe me on how at least 90% accurate the city is in some parts. Now with better development tools, we can actually explore the city to an extent in a new beautiful three-dimensional way, which is dripping with insane realistic detail. The corridors in the station that brim with atmospheric lighting, barely illuminating the blood-stained floors and walls of the environment, the groans and hisses from the very highly detailed zombies and lickers. I can go on and on about the visuals. It's absolutely insane. It really is. The remake really is brimming with a lot of stunning detail, including the atmospheric tension, like the previous game, Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. The gas station, the streets, the RPD, the sewers, and the lab are all really effective with pulling you into the world while making you feel really uneasy. These sections combining great level design, eerie sound design, and bloodthirsty enemies make it one of the scariest, intense, over-the-shoulder third-person entries in the entire series. I'd even say it's the scariest third-person Resident Evil game in the entire series. I applaud Capcom on reassuring everyone that even with a remake of a game many are familiar with, that they can still twist it into a new hellish experience. Great work from everyone involved in the development process. Okay then, let's slide the visual praising to the side before I get carried away with it. How about moving to the topic of gameplay, which is drastically different than its original counterpart.
No choice. Gotta take it down.
Resident Evil 2 2019's gameplay is very refined and a vast improvement compared to other entries. The over-the-shoulder perspective returns but with modern third-person controls. You can now move and look around pretty smoothly with modernized controls instead of static camera angles and tank controls. It's very much a far cry from the OG game, that's for sure. Shooting on one hand is not shaky like the previous installment and is more in line with previous third-person entries. Except here it's very refined in gameplay compared to the other Resident Evil games. You once more play as beloved returning characters, Claire Redfield and Leon S. Kennedy, who are back to being slightly more lacking in experience, due to this being a remake of their first debut. They have experience, it's just limited due to their beginnings here in Raccoon City. They're not action heroes yet, so it really helps with bringing you back down to the basics of survival horror. You still manage your inventory that now can be upgraded through pouches that's scattered throughout the game. You can also still craft herbs and ammunition too. You know, the classic Resident Evil mechanics we know of to be going on strong since the mid-90s. Speaking of Claire and Leon, let's rewind a bit to a great returning feature for the remake. I'm referring to the classic A and B scenarios from the original. If you're unfamiliar with the A and B scenarios, here's a simple explanation. In the original, you either played Claire A, Leon B, or Leon A, Claire B. After completing the A scenario, you had to play through the B scenario to get the actual ending of the game. These scenarios are also very large in variety with both characters. There's different stories, different weapons, and different events to experience with that specific character. You will actually take similar, yet different pathways leading to the same exact last level. I think besides story differences, the weapons are also kind of a big game changer in the scenarios. Claire will start off with a handgun like Leon, but her secondary weapon will be a grenade launcher. In comparison, Leon instead will receive a shotgun instead as his secondary weapon. Claire later might get a new weapon in one place, while Leon might get an upgradable part for his handgun in that exact same place. Even the late game bosses and late game weapons are varied if not different, so sticking to that like in the original makes it better for replayability value. Also, while not exactly super new here, there is a new take on the discarding key item system. Resident Evil 2 adds a visual where you'll be able to see a check mark on key items that have been used to their fullest of potential, letting you know that you can now discard that item. And in classic games, like in the first remake, you were offered to discard an item after using it to its fullest, kind of automatically, which these were mainly consisting of keys you would use around the mansion. Here it's actually manual to discard, allowing you to discard whenever or wherever. That now newly open slot you have can actually be used, or if not saved for a useful item later on down the pathway, instead of having to run back and forth to an item box constantly. Speaking of useful items, there are now pieces of yellow painted wood scattered around the station to board up windows with. You sadly cannot board up all of the windows, however not being able to makes utilizing wooden boards that much more intense. Having it be limited can be beneficial for using them instantly, preventing hallways from being packed full of zombies, while saving them could be good for, let's say, later sections that might need them more. Be careful once you want to board up though, because it'll determine later sequences to be either easier or much harder. Aside from boarding up windows, which you should do in any zombie apocalypse obviously, there's a classic mechanic that does return from Resident Evil Remake. Sub-weapons make a blessed return in this new familiar bloody twist of a remake for Resident Evil 2. Not only do they return, but you're able to utilize sub-weapons however you like for tense situations. These are not exactly primarily sub-weapons only, but you can actually get through the remake using them manually instead. These sub-weapons range from knives with durability to grenades both explosive and flashy. As a side note, knives, like stated, have durability due to having more than one use, so be careful using knives because they can be really useful for confirming kills that in return spare bullets in the process. Grenades sort of fall into the multi-use category too. Explosive grenades are best for groups of zombies, if not bosses. Flash grenades, on the other hand, are great for many things no matter what the situation is. As for why these are classified as sub-weapons, if attacked up close by any enemy type, a prompt will quickly appear and, well, give you a short window to use one of them. Using one of these can help you get away or get distance while severely injuring, stunning, or killing what's attacking you. If you're using a knife, then chances are you can pick it back up if it's not broken with the enemy dead on the ground or playing possum. More on that later. Grenades can deal lots of damage if not kill what's attacking you or anything in close range. Flash grenades really are just best for any type of situation that you can find yourself stuck in, and it will give you a window to escape, heal, deal more damage, or all of the above. If you do not utilize these in a grasp, then you'll be either severely injured or killed. It's all about that survival horror on the move decision making. Okay, now that we have the sub-weapon part out of the way, we can actually move on to another important feature to Resident Evil: puzzle solving. If you were disappointed in the last game's simplistic shadow puzzles, then fear no more. Resident Evil 2 has a lot of them. Some are easy, some are not so easy. The puzzles, despite being easy and hard, are still really great. Some of these are the best I've seen in the series. They're actually pretty effective. You feel such a large sense of satisfaction when you get through them. None feel too difficult to sort. One in particular, though, later in the lab portion, is kind of tricky. Still, vastly improved in terms of variety, especially when compared to the previous installment. So we have refined controls, familiar survival horror mechanics, A/B scenarios, new mechanics, sub-weapons, and puzzles. How about we talk about the enemy variety for the next category, because there are quite a lot of bloodthirsty enemies in Resident Evil 2 2019. The enemies you'll face in Raccoon City are downright nightmarish. I never considered zombies to be scary, but Capcom was on a mission to make sure I changed that opinion really fast because, wow, are zombies pure horror in this entry. Zombies might not turn into Crimson Heads like they do in the original or remake of Resident Evil, but they can still lunge and run for a bit to grab a hold of you for a sample. Zombies, while you might think can go down with a simple headshot, actually do not. It's more of a dice roll to get critical headshots, which can confirm zombies to be dead, for sure. If you're struggling with headshots, simply hinder them with shooting their arms or legs off. Doing so will slow them down, if not prevent them from easily grabbing you. Sometimes a shotgun blast to the stomach would divide them into two pieces. That's right, we have borderline realistic zombie limb physics in a Resident Evil game. Having this in a Resident Evil game may not be, the biggest of deal for other people who consume different zombie video games, but for Resident Evil, this is pretty great. It's absolutely amazing if you ask me. Aside from the zombies' destructible bodies, they have a feature where they can actually play possum, like I mentioned earlier. So yeah, if you think you killed a zombie, with it going down pretty easily, then chances are you're probably being tricked. Sometimes a zombie will just get back up, potentially waiting for you to walk right back through that room's door, just to attack you. Always confirm a kill if you're unsure by utilizing a knife. Maybe a spare bullet that could randomly kill the not dead undead enemy. And maybe it could work, maybe it won't. It's all about that dice roll on what you want to utilize at that moment. Zombies can also travel between rooms, so be careful on leading the undead through doors, who, unlike the molded, can actually break through doors quite easily and make later encounters that much more of a hassle. Another enemy you'll run into that vastly separates itself from the zombies is quite the horrifying threat. I'm talking about the lickers.
God's man.
These anxiety-increasing enemies are blind but rely on their super hearing to attack you. So walking around these intimidating creatures is the best strategy unless you're in a hurry, which I recommend carrying at least a flash grenade with you to stun them, but be careful though, they swing in the stun crazed state when they are flashed. Overall, stealth could be the best solution, but it varies on your playthrough. If you even run or shoot, they start crawling around really fast to lunge in for the attack, if not the kill. Besides lickers crawling around, you have zombie dogs in different areas of the game. Thankfully, they're not that abundant compared to zombies and lickers. However, when they do appear, you either need to run or take care of them. Sometimes running is a better option, although they are one of the fastest in-game enemies to face off against, and they can actually chip away at your health. Also, in comparison, while on topic and off topic, zombie dogs, I notice, are kind of like Soulsborne dogs in terms of quickly, viciously knocking down your health and being nothing but semi-annoying. Here I actually find zombie dogs to be more tolerable than Soulsborne dogs, but that's off topic. They can be quite annoying still, especially at times when you're in a very difficult situation. Thankfully though, on the other hand, they're even less abundant in the game. They really only ever appear in the beginning, if not center of the game. Still, be very considerate of them. These vicious, undead dogs will be tricky to land a shot or a few on them. That is, unless you utilize a grenade or, for multiple, or even a flash grenade to stun them for free hits. Although a shotgun on Leon's campaign is probably a good choice without grenades. Okay, I think I actually need to take a break for a second, or at least from the enemy overview, because I need to talk about the large 7-foot bioweapon elephant in the room. And I'm pretty sure you know who I'm talking about.
Jesus Christ!
Jesus, stay back!
Yeah, I'm talking about the anxiety-inducing, horrifying Mr. X, aka codenamed Tyrant, canonically named in universe. Mr. X here, compared to his original counterpart, operates quite differently. In the original, he only appeared at scripted moments, being only a temporary threat until his boss fight at the very end of the game. Mr. X here, however, was one of the biggest changes to the game, and I mean also one of the biggest takeaways from the average player experience. Everyone knew who or what this thing was after playing the remake. There were so many memes about this figure, and you've probably seen him on plenty of video covers in 2019. Mr. X really did step up to iconic nemesis level, sending adrenaline through everyone's system. Unlike most players, when I first played, I was definitely brave when I encountered him. I definitely did not hide in the boiler save room for like 10 minutes listening to his heavy footsteps echo around the area, too afraid to step out to explore. Don't laugh at me. Anyways, Mr. X roams the halls of the station in pursuit of Claire and or Leon, pretty much killing anything left resembling an uninfected human being. So, what can you do to the walking fedora trench coat wearing behemoth that is almost pretty much a steel wall? Nothing except maybe stun or down him, kind of like Jack Baker. You can put him down for a short amount of time, although I don't think it's really worth it. You're wasting ammunition doing this unless you actually need that valuable time. Best thing to do is to slowly walk around the station, avoiding him making no loud noises like running, shooting, or anything combat related. He thankfully cannot enter save rooms, so if you need a break, get to a save room for that breather. Listening to where he can be is useful, but it can actually be quite tricky. Sometimes your hearing can actually fail you on where he's walking around, leaving you to get knocked down by the threat walking through a door if not careful. Whatever you do, just be aware of the hulking behemoth of a bioweapon. Focus on the objective of leaving the station where you can get him out of the picture. Well, at least for Claire. Leon not so much, being a consistent enemy to evade as him, versus Claire unless it's a B scenario.
Is this a fucking joke?
Sorry, Leon S. Kennedy fans. We have to manage with Mr. X. Bro? Bro, why do I still hear your music? Why are your music still playing? What, bro, what the fuck? Now let us talk about the rest of the enemy types in the game, being 2 more types actually. We have the sewer threats of the game, which really quickly, let me just kind of throw in, you do go up against an alligator in the original game, and you do so in this game, but it's only exclusive for Leon's campaign, in the set form of an actual action sequence. And so, I mean, it's a really great sequence, but overall, in the original, you did encounter this creature as, you know, both characters. But here, it is only exclusively for Leon. So if you do not encounter it in Claire's playthrough, do not worry, it's in Leon's playthrough, but it is kind of short-lived, which I guess is kind of like the original in a way, too. I mean, they play out both very similar. You do end up having to shoot a tank in its mouth, blowing it up. So, I mean, it's still somewhat accurate. Altered, though.
Chew on that, you overgrown son of a bitch.
Anyways, the last 2 enemy types of the game. In the sewer, one of the other threats is the G-Adult, or G-Adults, which are very new. They're really weird with an eerie howl that sounds oddly human-like. The form that they do have is pretty bulky, causing a slight bit of difficulty to get around them with, which will sometimes leave you open for their swiping or grabbing ability. The swipe or grab ability is a very dangerous one. The move can waste sub-weapons if you don't want to be poisoned. If you are poisoned, simply use a blue herb to heal, whether it's a single one or even a combined one. They even have an obvious weak spot that's covered, yet running from them as well as stunning them could be best depending on your playstyle. If you do not stay within their area of attack, they'll throw up baby versions of themselves to chip away at your health, so keep that handgun close to you. There is one less enemy type, but it's an enemy type that is familiar, and it is one that you will need fire, sparks, and, well, sub-weapons for. We have the Ivy zombies from the original returning. Interestingly, they can actually one-shot you now, which is kind of cool and also kind of horrifying. And this can only happen if you do not have a sub-weapon on you if they grab a hold of you. To avoid these encounters, fire from a flamethrower from Leon's campaign or sparks from a spark shot from Claire's campaign are best to counter them. Heck, if you have the grenade launcher as Claire, loaded with flame rounds, then knock yourself out. It'll save you ammunition from the spark shot, which exclusively, like I stated before, is for Claire and her scenario, her campaign. Trust me, use it only when needed if you're all out of fire. Other than the obvious weakness, keep a knife or grenade on you so you don't have to die instantly, over and over and over. It'll save you from restarting many times, especially on hardcore, trust me. Okay, enemy this, enemy that. Fighting enemies of all sorts is a main compelling element to the genre of Resident Evil being survival horror. However, so is the lore that is woven into these stories throughout the entire series. Let us take a dive into the story of the undead city with never-ending rain. Welcome to Raccoon City. Resident Evil 2 Remake is definitely one of my most favorable Resident Evil games of all time. Definitely within my top 5 favorite Resident Evil games in the entire series. I love what this game does. It does have some flaws. It's not perfect. I do think the beast scenario, as much as I do like it, is kind of lacking slightly, or not slightly, but more just in like the the boss fights and the scenario situations that are kind of recycled. Really, looking at it, like you go through the same situations kind of to an extent and fight the same bosses, except for the late game bosses, that is. But still, it's like, did I not already do this before? And then there's this one character being Annette Birkin who happens to die in different situations. I mean, dies relatively to the same cause of death, being her own husband, this freak of nature, William Birkin, both being Umbrella scientists, but she dies to the damage he's caused to her, being a regular human being. And yeah, she dies in 2 different places. I'm just like, that's kind of slightly hurting the consistency of the game. But you know what, for what the game is, on how great it is, I can overlook that and go with the game being a critical 9 out of 10. I do think this is a really great entry. I even like it more than Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, and I have a strong attachment to that game. But this game, I can say, is the better game with the replayability, the gameplay, and everything. All of it's really great. I love it. This one definitely feels very solid in the survival horror department. It has a lot of better things in comparison, but it is a remake of a beloved classic from 1998, and I think it does a really great job at doing that. I mean, technically, in ranking the remakes, I'm not too sure on what is first place because, you know, I'm kind of fighting with myself about it, but I know this is in third place. I do think this is one of the stronger remakes, definitely. I know that's subjective, but still. Aside from that, yeah, the story here is great, and I think the characters are one of the strongest. I think they're the pillars for the story. You know, they're the ones that's holding the story up in a lot of ways, besides the very interesting lore in the game. That's really great. I mean, a lot of the lore in Resident Evil games are really good, but the characters are also one of the biggest parts in the series. Like, they're one of the biggest parts in, like, any game in the Resident Evil series, and I think that's really cool because they bring a lot of charm and personality to the game, and who you play as, it's so good. I really do think that Leon S. Kennedy and Claire Redfield are amazing in this game, being portrayed by Nick Apostolidis and Stephanie Panisello. I think they're great. I think they're great. I think they play the roles really amazingly. They're well realized, as well as the other characters in this game. Leon S. Kennedy, Claire Redfield, Marvin Brana, Kendo, Ada, so on and so forth. They're all great. I think everyone did a really great job with what they were working with, and this game being kind of a realistic representation of that, not only because of how it looks, but of how the characters act. There is some cheese and cam to it, don't worry. It does have that classic, you know, wacky stuff going on with Resident Evil.
Holy shit!
But it's not insanely wacky, and that's not the dunk on the OG game. I think what makes the OG games all that much more, all that great is how much charm they have and how cool they can actually be for games from that time period. Because, I mean, the cast, even in those games, as, you know, I actually look at Resident Evil 2 kind of like a 90s classic, classic 90s action anime, and I think that's probably a really good description for that game. I mean, it is still horrifying, you know, to an extent, but I do like the cast in that game, and speaking of which, rest in peace to Paul Haddad, who played the original Leon S. Kennedy, or he played Leon S. Kennedy first, but he will forever be the original portrayal of the character. He's the one who started it all and paved the way for many other actors down the line with each game that launched to play the role of the character. I think that's amazing. Like, Paul Haddad, Matt Mercer, and Nick Apostolidis were, you know, next in line on playing the character, and with Nick Apostolidis being the new Leon S. Kennedy, I think he's absolutely amazing as the character, both in this game and Resident Evil 4 Remake. He's really amazing. And Stephanie as Claire, I did not know much about Claire before playing this. I did see, before the 7th game, I seen a Game Informer cover, or I had a Game Informer with Claire Redfield on the cover of it, but I didn't really know, I didn't really have any knowledge of who she was, obviously, because I wasn't interested in Resident Evil at the time. But playing this game, like, yeah, she's really cool. I think Leon and Claire are both badasses in this game, especially for being beginners. The way they handled the situations, being heroic, trying to save individuals. Dude, I love it. I think Claire is great. And also, after watching Aliens recently, I do appreciate the Ellen Ripley and Newt dynamic that they have. That's really cool. Claire Redfield and Sherry Birkin are kind of like Ellen Ripley and Newt from Aliens, and I like that, especially when you play through her campaign and you're fighting Birkin in his, like, 4th form on that train elevator platform, with Claire blasting away with a minigun at this just eyeball-filled monstrosity that's barely recognizable, and you're just like, holy shoot, this is so cool. Like, Claire's a badass in this game. She takes the initiative, and she's so cool.
No! I got this. You should take care of Sherry. You don't know what you're up against.
I have a pretty damn good idea.
Whatever you do, don't stop until it's finished.
Trust me. This ends now.
And let's not take that away from Leon S. Kennedy. Me saying that, like, I'm a big Leon S. Kennedy fan. He is my most favorable Resident Evil character. Like, he is my favorite out of the entire cast of Resident Evil characters. And I know I sound basic, But you know what? I mean, hey, for all those fans, we can all be basic together. But still, I mean, yeah, as a fan of Leon S. Kennedy, I do appreciate Claire a lot in this game. uh, I do hope that Code Veronica is a remake that's going to be a thing. Or I'm sorry, I do hope that there is going to be a Code Veronica remake that is going to be like an actual official thing for everyone, with Stephanie reprising the role. I really want to see that because I think we need more Claire Redfield, because she only has 3 entries in the entire series technically, in terms of games that are pretty much canon. Like Resident Evil 2, I'm not gonna, count the original. I'm gonna kind of put that in the same spot as the remake. But Resident Evil 2, Code Veronica, and Revelations 2, those are the main 3 games that she's really been in, and one of them is a mainline game. I think she needs more love and attention. But yeah, I do like Claire Redfield in this game. I do love her. Both of them are really cool. I mean, Leon S. Kennedy is a rookie officer with his first day on the job, going through this infected hellscape of Raccoon City. I mean, oh man. And then Claire Redfield being a university student looking for her older brother, Chris Redfield, who's a STARS member, this elite officer at the RPD where Leon was supposed to start working at. And them joining together on the same pathway only to be separated and divided is a really cool story. I love it. And also, if you don't know who Chris Redfield is, he's from the first game. But I'm pretty sure a lot of people know who Chris is. Still, I think the story is really great here, uncovering what happened to the city and what happened with Umbrella, this pharmaceutical company. Whether you know Umbrella is evil or not, you still like to see what happened. Like, watching the tapes, seeing what happened through the tapes, and reading the documents, whether they're eerie or sad or both, or overall horrifying. I think they knocked it out of the park. I love the direction they took with the story, how well shot it is. I know that sounds weird saying that for a video game, but I mean, they use motion capture, and the characters really sell it as being actual believable characters. Like, man, and characters do get a lot of they get a lot of improvement in this game. Like Marvin and Kendo, who are one-off characters, actually have more of a character in this game than the original. No offense, but they do. Marvin especially, he gets a heck of a glow up in this game. Both him and Kendo are very sympathetic characters, and I love the way they're portrayed. They're so cool, and they actually give solid advice not only to the characters that you play as in those scenarios, regardless of what is canon and what is not, but it's solid advice to the player,
This is good news. We can get you to a hospital.
No, I am not the priority here.
Lieutenant, I'm not just gonna leave you here.
I'm giving you an order, rookie. You save yourself first. I'd come with you, but I'd just slow you down. Now, you'll need this.
I can't take him.
Stop. And don't make my mistake. If you see one of those things, uniform or not, you do not hesitate. You take it out, or you run. Got it?
Yes, sir.
And man, every character in this game, I mean, whether they're good or bad, like, in terms of their character, they're all well realized, and I think the remake does a really great job on, showing that, whether to like veteran players and new players. It's like, yeah, this is a remake of a game from 1998, and it's really, really good. So I applaud Capcom on that. And also, what's really cool about this is that when I played through this game, this is like a quick mini story. I mean, you don't have to listen to this, obviously, but quick mini story. I was playing this game and I was beating the B scenario for the first time. I played it in the original canon, Claire A, Leon B, which, by the way, the new canon is Leon A, Claire B. I'll get into that in a different video. I'll make sure I kind of cover that, but trust me, Resident Evil 4 Remake makes sure that is the new canon. But I played Claire A, Leon B, and no joke, whenever I got to the part where the radio man says, next up on this boring Wednesday morning, here's something to get your blood pumping, I looked out of my window and seen it was dawn on a Wednesday morning, and I played through both scenarios on hardcore back-to-back, pulling an all-nighter, and it was so cool. I was tired, like them, but I think that's what further enhanced the experience. I loved that moment. Like, it made me just like, man, I really need to get some sleep, but that was freaking amazing. Heck yeah, dude, really great. That was really cool. I really can't believe I never paid any attention to this game. I didn't even know this game existed, which is weird because I seen Devil May Cry 5 at E3, which is where, I mean, it was at, you know, Xbox's showcase, not PlayStation showcase. PlayStation showcase had Resident Evil 2 Remake. But it's weird that I didn't even know about this game, really. I might have heard something about it, but I didn't even know it launched until like a week or two after, you know, its launch in stores. And I was like, oh, wow. Like Resident Evil 2, I was confused, and then I was like, oh, it's a remake. I was like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, and I eventually played some of the original before picking up my copy. I had ordered afterwards, and I was like yeah, I was trying to get a taste of what the game was gonna be like, and it was really different but really similar in places. Still really great remake, really great Resident Evil entry. Overall, a really great video game. So yeah. And when you do beat the game, you do get a really cool unlockable game mode that is like the original, the Fourth Survivor, where you play as the badass, mysterious hunk, where you fight through a gauntlet of enemies you fought through in the campaign itself. And there's the Ghost Survivors DLC of characters that were either dead or died on screen. You get to play through what is their alternate storylines where they lived, or you have to keep them alive and then they make it to, you know, their point of survival where they get to move on. And I think that's really cool. And then there's also the tofu mode, which is a really cool, I guess you can say sort of an inside joke or a reference, but you know, I won't get into all of it, but it's a really cool reference to the development of the OG game, which is cool. Speaking of which, there is a really cool costume you can purchase individually. I know you can unlock it, it's kind of crappy, but still. It's the Elza Walker costume that was, and if you don't know who that is, she was a character from the 1.5 version of the original Resident Evil 2 before they scrapped that whole entire game and made Resident Evil 2 what it is in '98. And man, I think it's really cool to put a costume like that in the game for Claire. So it's like, hey, you can kind of play as that character that was scrapped with the 1.5 version. And so that's neat. And speaking of which, speaking of classics, you unlock the alternative costumes from the OG game, but they're redesigning the Reach for the Moon engine, and I think they're really cool. They're free and unlockable, and then you can also download for free the 98 models to replace the character models, and you can just play as the original Resident Evil 2 models and be as poly as you like. Sorry, that probably sounds weird with how people interpret that. I'm sorry. You can be very polygonal as you like. And yeah, I think that's really neat. If you want to make it even more of a classic playthrough, boot it up on hardcore difficulty where you can only save with ink ribbons. I think that's even better. So there you go. But you want to know what else can even make it even better? You can, this is also another purchasable thing. I think it should have been unlockable, but you can purchase the classic soundtrack that has the classic music. You can purchase the classic, it's the classic soundtrack. It has the classic music, the classic sound effects that replace the remix music and sound effects. And there you go. You have classic Resident Evil and your Resident Evil 2 remake. There you go. So yeah, I'm not gonna keep going on and on. I'll be here for like 2 hours if I keep going on and on. But yeah, Resident Evil 2 remake. I love the game. It is so dope. I love this game, man. I really do love it. I had a great time replaying it for this video. It was kind of a bumpy road making this video, but yes, I do think that the game is still amazing to this day. 5 years ago at launch. Really crazy. And so yeah, Leon S. Kennedy, Sherry Birkin, and Claire Redfield walk off together into the sunset hand in hand, leaving behind the nightmare of Raccoon City.
Hey, you guys can adopt me.
Adopt you.
We can get a puppy
Puppy.
and a parrot.
Parrot.
I always wanted pets, but my mom said they're too messy.
Next up on this boring Wednesday is a song to get your blood pumping.
If I could just forget what happened that night. The pain. Even for a second. This time, it can be different. It has to.
Hey yo everybody, Clark Kinchi here, and thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all the positive feedback I've been receiving for my Resident Evil 7 Biohazard 7 Years Later video. It means a lot to me, all of that positive feedback and support. When making this video, it was kind of bumpy, but I did go back to the video to read the comment section once more, and it did give me that boost of motivation and some slight confidence to keep going forward with the video. Because I was hitting some bumps here and there. I was kind of like, should I keep going with this video? You know, like, should I even go and, you know, complete it? But you know what? Here it is. And thank you for tuning in, watching it. And thank you so much for... So in my Resident Evil 7 Biohazard 7 Years Later video, I reference how I went from 10 subscribers in March to around 388 subscribers. I'm sorry, 320 subscribers. But after that, it went up to 388 subscribers, and I appreciate it so much. It is absolutely insane. Man, I guess you could say I'm at a loss for words other than thank you. I mean, I wish I could stress on how appreciative I am for it. But seriously, thank you for all the positive feedback. Thank you for sharing, you know, how you felt about Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. And maybe you'll probably do the same with this video on Resident Evil 2 Remake or Resident Evil 2 2019. Seriously, thank you all so much. And here's to more Resident Evil videos I hope to make on the channel, as well as other video game videos as well, maybe gameplay videos here and there. I might try to work into the commentary filled videos with playing games. I guess you can say Let's Plays, but you know, maybe non-commentary videos here and informative videos on Resident Evil and other games as well. Speaking of which, I will be making a video on why Leon A and Claire B are the actual new canon for the remake timeline, at least. The original timeline, the OG timeline, definitely still is, you know, Claire A and Leon B, but for the remake, it is Leon A, Claire B, thanks to Resident Evil 4 Remake. So I'll elaborate on that, and hopefully you stay tuned for that video. But with that, I'll wrap it up right here, and thank you everybody so much for watching, and as always, I hope each and every one of you have a great and safe day. Thank you.